This is My Podcast is Pink. And that was Planets Don't Need Life to Thrive by Death by Knowledge. This is My Podcast is Pink. Here's Evan Jarvicks interviewing Death by Knowledge and Santiago Ramones.
Thanks, Elecktra. I am Jarvicks, Chief Executive Weirdo of Make Oklahoma Weirder, and this is the first episode ever of My Podcast is Pink. And I am joined today by Death by Knowledge, our musical guest, and Santiago Ramones, our industry professional. Let's start with just introducing everyone. Let's start with you, Santiago.
Hi, I'm Santiago Ramones. I am a composer, podcaster, producer, songwriter, performer. In this context, I'm talking about podcasting.
Nice. I'm Hayden Bedwell. I played in the local scene for a long time, just under my name, and then we've played through many bands, and then me and Brandon hooked up 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, probably like 2014.
Yeah, and we've always had an easy, not just easy friendship, but just partnership. So we've been playing with each other ever since, and we both front Death by Knowledge at different times. Yeah.
What's up, guys? I'm Jake. Play drums.
Sometimes I do vocals. It just depends on the outfit. I'm in a couple projects, but this one is really close to my heart. Been in it for a few years now, so appreciate y'all letting me be here.
Well, we appreciate you, man.
I love having you.
You kill it.
I'm Griff. I play bass in Death by Knowledge. I'm not usually this short, but in the seating situation that we're in, I'm down here. But yeah, I play in a couple projects too, and I've been doing stuff all over. And I also make movies and do a lot of other stuff for people with movies.
Right on. My name's Brandon. I play guitar in Death by Knowledge, and I started it with Hayden probably, like 2015 or something like that. It was a bunch of different bands.
No, it was like, so we were actually playing under the name Death by Knowledge before I feel like we were actually Death by Knowledge.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
is like, and it was just a bunch of acoustic stuff we were doing with Andy at the time, which was basically just my solo stuff. And I always wanted, we just didn't have the gear. You didn't have an electric guitar at the time. And I feel like me and you were both like, we want to play this kind of stuff, not this kind of stuff. And it just kind of, once we got the gear and everything, it just kind of slowly started pushing the way where we kind of the vision we had more so.
But
no more grandpa's guitars.
Yeah. Yeah, I just write music, and I try to do some writing like in the works right now for like movie scripts and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it.
Cool. Well, we've already heard a little bit about some of the genesis of the band. I do know that the name does exist long before I was really aware of what you were doing. You've definitely blipped on my radar more the past few years with some of the recorded material, the Resonator shows and things of that nature. So what, let's see. I'm really interested in the new album that you have, right? Mm-hmm. It's an EP. It's 3 tracks. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite remembering what the name of it is.
Every day is a blessing.
Is a blessing. That's right. Okay. So I would like to know more about that title and more about some of the bigger ideas that I think are playing in those songs.
Brandon?
Since that came from Fear.
Right. That's true. As it got closer to putting out the EP, we decided, hey, we probably should name it something. And when we were thinking, hey, Every Day is a Blessing sounds cool. And he always really liked that line from that song. And Fear was a song that I wrote probably on back when I played my electric guitar before I had an amp.
We were doing it long before Death by Knowledge was even a thing.
Because when I first met Hayden, I didn't really have any music equipment. I had just like a $50 electric guitar with no amp. And I just like started playing guitar. And I wrote that song a long time ago, unplugged and stuff. And so, when I don't know, somehow that lyric just always came out like when I was writing the lyrics for that song.
It's weird to think about that, but I've literally just watched you learn guitar for the last...
Yeah, pretty
He's
much.
one of those guys that's just like, man, I want to do this. And then he just does it. I want to speed run Perfect Dark. And he's like, now I'm in 8th place in the world.
He's just one of those guys who you can literally just do anything. He just feels like doing, but he has to feel like doing it, you know?
No, for sure.
So
one time somebody paid a compliment to Brandon, to me. They were like, Brandon's like creative ability is almost like a thing that you could never do yourself. It's so distinctly like what Brandon does type thing. Like even like the songs that you'll send us and stuff, I'm always kind of like that I'm not even like sure what to put my finger on in terms of like what this sounds like or whatever. I'm like we just got to figure it out together because you know, like it's so wholeheartedly what you're doing type thing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's really nice. But yeah, for the Every Day's a Blessing lyric, I guess really that's more of a in the idea of being afraid of things is that every day that we get to live is something that should be celebrated, but we're too busy stuck in what we're afraid of to actually, you know, enjoy it.
Right, so. Just kind of getting caught in the monotony of life without actually enjoying the experience of being alive.
I feel like that's a lot of what Death by Knowledge is, lyric-wise, for the most part. So.
And the lyric even there, to finish that lyric, is every day is a blessing that you don't deserve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I find it really interesting, I guess, that there's kind of like some optimism laced in everything that you're doing, despite very much acknowledging the cold hard reality of existence.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting dynamic. And I just, how do you find that?
Well, for me, of thinking of the name, first of all, when I came up with the name, my first idea was that as you grow as a person and you learn things, you kind of have to die like of who you were before and like move on to the next person you're going to be. And so to be able to accept that things are bad, but that's the only way that things are going to get better towards how you want them to be. And that's part of like what that death is. And so for me, like looking into existentialism in my own free time of trying to make your own life out of everything. And that's pretty much the most happiness you can get. And it's just life trying to sidetrack you the whole time of trying to actually achieve that. Yeah. So,
I mean, I know we come across a lot as like very nihilistic, but I think like deep down, we're really just existentialists, like to a point. I mean, that's kind of where, I mean, I can't speak for you, but for me, it's like I grew up a lot with like just dealing with depression, and you know, eventually you get to an age, just like, well, I mean, a lot of it was just like anticipated, like exaggerated with a, like basically I had a magnesium deficiency that was just over exaggerating, and honestly, I didn't figure that out till I was like 24. So I feel like I've been in my right head more so in the last 5 years than I have most of my life, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I mean, it's like eventually you just get to a point like you've been sad and stuff most of your life, and you're just like, you just get tired of it. You just kind of want to try to focus on the good things and just kind of move forward with that. So I think that's probably why optimism shows up so much in just our music, because it's like, yeah, you know, my things might be this way, but it's all about how you choose to approach everything too. I mean, life's going to throw you things no matter what.
Yeah.
You know,
hopefully at the end of the day, everything's do work out. So yeah.
It's just kind of keeping that optimism and hoping for it. And even when it doesn't happen, kind of just adjusting to the situation and moving forward.
Maybe that's even kind of the like fun absurdity of like why we like being so like ridiculous on stage or like have like performance art bits and stuff. I think is because you like to kind of put a mood on. It's like a sad thing that we're trying to market our music to you, but we're also trying to like lighten it up by being like, isn't it ridiculous that we're trying to market music to you right now?
And that is just, that's just, it's gotten just so much more absurd from where we started to like where we are now.
Right.
And it's just like, yeah, there's always going to be a bit of absurdity in what we're doing. I mean, it's just life.
I think if it's all dark, then Death by Knowledge becomes the bro metal band that we don't want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That we don't want it to ever be type thing.
Right. Which that's a fun thing, because like if you've never heard our band, I mean, like even like talking to you, like that we just come out like our name comes off as a bro metal band, which is funny.
Right.
I find it hilarious.
We remember that being a distinct thing, was that like what initially sounds like a bro metal band is actually very riffy indie guitar stuff. I've even had people tell me that, where they're like, you're in a band called Grandpa Vern, you're in a band called Death by Knowledge. And he's like, Death by Knowledge sounds like it should be the metal band, but Grandpa Vern is the metal band. And then I was like, yeah.
And then you see the t-shirt we made, and it really doubles down.
You really are like, but it's not, I thought.
Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper on books. Yeah.
It's like the Phoebe Bridgers approach, or like the whole Julian Baker of making like complete metal merch but not being a metal artist.
Be scary, but not, the music's not that scary. Yeah.
That t-shirt, that's the album art, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where did that come from?
That came from this lady I work with at Dollar General. She was an artist, and she is like really good. She works at Dollar General part-time, but she hustles art all around.
Shout out.
People are sending her shoes and stuff from Florida, mailing them to her saying, I want you to put this on it. And she makes it look like photorealistic, like what you want. There's that cartoon, The Boondocks, with Granddad and Huey Freeman, all them. And she has boots that she made where she painted like the whole crew on it with like the Boondocks and Gangsterlicious and everything. And so when I saw that she could do it that well, I was like, do some artwork.
So we bought the drawings from her like a soulless corporation.
Yeah. So I told her, I said, just do whatever you want from the name of the band. And then that's what she did. So
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
really cool.
Did she listen to your music?
She did. Yeah, she
Okay.
thought it was cool. I showed her the Resonator video.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because she actually just moved to Texas and she retired from Dollar General, which I don't blame her. So
That's super cool. You mentioned earlier about the absurdity of things, and I might have written it, which for context, I have written about Death by Knowledge for the Make Oklahoma Weirder blog. We premiered the track Museum, which I think is such an interesting concept, and gave me a lot to write about. But I if I recall, I made a bit of a, or if I didn't, I'd like to say it now, that the absurdity kind of reflects some of that, big picture absurdity of just existence in and of itself. And so, with your stage banter and all of that, like it does almost come off a little surreal sometimes. And I don't know that, is that where that comes from? I know we've touched on it a little bit here, but is it, to what extent is it intentional and something that you're trying to do, or is it just like a natural extension of?
It's a little both, because there are times where we just plan out everything to a T and just have
story.
yeah, or for example, before Jake joined us, the Cat in the Hat show, we planned that out a lot, and we had a bunch of things going on through it. And then
I hired my buddy Jamal to be a plant lawyer in the audience.
Which, that was just great.
Yeah,
like just as like a lawyer from Universal coming to shut the entire show down.
yeah,
And he did such a good job too.
I think part of at least what I like in the absurdity part is that, I think like if you were to read the lyrics, they would kind of match the tone, I think, of what the show is putting out, which is like we're headbanging and we're being loud and we're thrashing and that kind of thing. And Jake's ripping on drums while we're, like making a bunch of noise and everything. But the lyrics are about how like museums are kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
And planets with viruses and stuff, but before COVID happened, it wasn't a reference. Should
I get into that?
We don't have to until we maybe talk about specifically planets don't need life.
But because we were gonna name and this is a whole thing before the pandemic even got going. We were really talking about naming our EP Virus, and I had a bunch of I had a bunch of virus stuff in my lyrics, just as allegories and stuff, and then all of a sudden, bam. Planets was actually predates the pandemic by a month.
We're not saying that we predicted all of this, but
yeah.
You're welcome, Fauci.
What can I say?
So you decided to change it because it was of the time?
The thing is the pandemic has been such an just encompasses and just overbearing on everything. It's just something we've all just as people have been dealing with the past 2 years, just throughout everything. So it's just, I felt it was just too much. You know what I mean? It was just overbearing at that point. It's just overexposed thing. Because it's they're putting that, of course they are, because there's this whole thing going on and they think they can, it's so I didn't want it to come across that way, because it really wasn't that.
And it would be, it would be insensitive. It wasn't what the thing was actually about. If we were making a concept album about something as serious as COVID, we wouldn't probably take so much weird liberties about it or whatever. We'd probably try to take it seriously, which is not what we're really in the market to do in a lot of cases.
And if anything, for him to write a song like that before it happened, and then for this to happen, kind of proves your point.
Yeah,
and
which is weird, because Planets Don't Need Life to Thrive is really a song about, it's basically about climate change and just a clever presentation of that.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to ask, what's the sponsor thing you've been doing?
Our record
you mean our record label?
Oh, yeah, that's the record label.
Is that a record label? Because
yes,
sure. when I see, is it Great Brand Value Flakes? Am I remembering
You're
that?
familiar
That's very
with,
correct. Yeah.
You're familiar,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's the name of the record label.
our corporate overlords. Yes.
Yeah. They sell cereal, but they're also
gotta
trying
be
to
real,
get
right?
into. They're also trying to get in the entertainment business,
and a lot of other things we don't clearly understand completely, but it's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Says the guy that went to school for all this shit.
yeah.
I know that should tell you how confusing that company
That's how it
is.
works,
I mean,
yeah.
Cereal's just an easy end to the business.
Yeah.
It's a good starting.
Everybody
it's a good
loves
first
cereal,
step.
right?
Yeah.
So
You got to keep the lights on somehow. So
we have
you know,
faith in them.
we move-
And
Yeah.
like you never have just a little bit of cereal at once, right? You always go for like the biggest bowl, and then you have like the gallon jug of milk next to you. So you just add a little.
kitchen spoon, you're moving it and everything. Go get yourself some great brand value flakes if you can, folks, and support our EP.
yeah, like we literally had like cereal for sale, like at our EP show.
We sold cereal at the merch table.
There were cereal crowns.
We're
There's,
actually contractually obligated to sell cereal at our shows now.
So how did that relationship form? Did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them?
They sent us a VHS tape like through the mail.
With
it was
no
just
return
like
address.
no return address, and it was just this guy in a pink ski mask, just like pitching us about how they can just make us famous.
Yeah,
and stuff.
and I've only ever seen that guy through video.
Yeah, I mean, we've never really met him.
He's not a guy you meet in person.
He's like he's just very private. I mean,
Kind of like Batman.
no, I mean, Batman's not very private. I mean, you can go to Gotham.
But the
and
guy inside the bat.
right. He's
Maybe.
I mean, how philosophical do you want to get on this whole conversation about
We
Batman?
could be
Because
here for hours, sir.
I could do it.
But I'm sure
He's
at
not
some
even
point
a
they'll reach
superhero.
out, maybe even to you too.
We'll start out with that.
You know, they're trying to do as much as they can. So.
Crack into the OKC music scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
That
Well,
lucrative.
we're centralized in the U.S., so they figured it's like distribution wise, it's the easiest. Right.
You know, I mean, like, be honest.
Cost
I mean,
of fuel,
the
what it is,
more and more
you
we
know?
read through that contract, the more and more
We're gonna put singles in the cereal box, I think, stuff like that. There's just gonna be
Like the
music.
It's a
Cracker
very
Jack packets
weirdly
are gonna be
worded
QR
contract.
codes. Yeah,
yeah, the QR codes and stuff. Yeah.
You know, as a band, you think about the ways that you'll make money one day, and whenever you think about being a sort of a corporate drone for a cereal company, you never imagine that your life is going to go this way. But then I think it's like that goes back to the absurdity of music and life.
You
and
find
stuff.
ways
And,
to play music where you can.
yeah, you
so.
got to play music somehow, some way,
and eating cereal along the way.
yeah, and pick up a box. I believe they're going to come out with different flavors next time. People have been requesting them.
I don't normally eat cereal, but I tried it and I thought it was
Maybe
okay.
a death by knowledge cereal.
They keep shutting down factories though in like Eastern Europe. I've noticed. So
But yeah, that's pretty much the deal
For
with those
reasons.
guys. So.
yeah, I mean, for good reasons.
Good people.
Well, since this is a local music podcast, what are some other local bands or artists that you think would be a good fit for great brand value flakes?
Oh man.
Where do we begin?
So many.
I think it depends on. I think it depends a little bit on what they're looking to do during a show. If they want to do something big and crazy, then maybe they need a little bit more sponsorship.
Griff
money
was like
behind it.
talking about Shaka, and like I think anything along the lines of just doing weird stuff would
Yeah.
be like.
I think Great Brand Value as a company probably really wants to reach out to the experimental market a little bit, and that's probably where they're going to be looking for more like bands and stuff, because I think like in the local scene, I'll turn this in the local scene in the
Little Shyamalan on you.
well, in the local scene, I do think that there is like sort of a very like experimental market and like a bunch of experimental artists and stuff. And then there are like artists that are a little bit more friendly to stuff you're already accustomed to, stuff you love listening to, the genres that you love listening to and stuff. And I think both of those places have a spot in Oklahoma City as a venue, as a place, wherever you're trying to do. I think the main thing is trying to find a way to get people to come out to a show at an experimental place, because it's hard to convince them that like people are going to lose their minds at how cool this experience is not always the thing that a bar is looking to do. You want to convince a bar that you can make bar sales for them. And I think Great Brand Value Flakes is looking for the sort of weirdos, the sort of like people who are on the experimental side of this music scene, and trying to kind of bring those people to light, to be like, this is not only marketable, this is something that people will consider a staple of Oklahoma is the weirdness of it all. Yeah.
They definitely have us in an airtight contract. So basically anything we're doing is definitely going there.
We're not even allowed to say their name more than 6 times on the podcast. So
Yeah, I think we already messed that up.
Yeah. I'm glad I turned my phone off because they're probably calling right now.
blowing
I
me
mean,
up.
man.
Well, you mentioned experimental music, which of course is something I greatly appreciate. I feel like that's a natural segue here because for those who don't know, I recently also started a new monthly music series called Mental Mondays at Hubbly Bubbly Hookah Lounge in the Asian district of OKC. And for our very first night ever, our headliner was none other than Santiago Ramones, which again, he is not here to necessarily talk about his music. Perhaps one day in the future. He does have an album in the works and all of that, but we have our first podcast episode. I felt it was important to have him on because he has a podcast called Bit Depth that recently hit 300 episodes, which is insane. There was a live recording at the Sanctuary recently, shout out. And yeah, very, very happy to have you on with your expertise and whatnot. And let's hear a little bit more about how I understand that you're an early adopter of podcasting, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, early, depending on who you ask, I mean, like, early is like Joe Rogan was like 2009 or something like that. But, as far as before the pandemic, definitely 2020 did a lot to make everyone and their cat want to have a podcast. But I started mine in 2016 and it was a way of whenever I grew up, I was one, undocumented, and two, I was really involved in like music stuff in high school. So I was in marching band, I was in show choir, I was in musical theater, and I couldn't drive because I was undocumented. And so whenever rehearsals would end super late or events would end super late, I would have friends drive me home and we'd just sit in the driveway having super deep conversations. And then it'd be like, okay, it's like 3 a.m. We should probably go home. But those deep conversations, or like, at sleepovers, we'd like attempt to sleep. But as soon as we lie down, I like start asking the deep philosophical questions. And those are the relationships that I've fostered. And like, they're my favorite friendships that I've made with people. And so I was trying to find a way of sort of intentionally doing this deep conversation thing. And by the time that I started, I was in school for music production. And so audio wasn't ever really like a problem for me anyways. So yeah, and I'd been listening to podcasts since like 2009. And so podcasts have always been in my life. And I was like, maybe I could do a podcast and do this deep conversation thing. And so that's how it started. And so I intentionally wanted to have deep philosophical conversations.
Falafel?
Yes, deep falafel and philosophy.
Nice.
That so it was about getting to know people in a deeper level, which was sort of what was happening whenever I was having those deep conversations with friends. And so it started that way. And so, yeah, whenever you kind of first start a podcast with guests, you kind of start asking all of the close people around you. And that's how it started. And then the pandemic happened. And so that was more of getting anyone who I can get on the internet. There was this, there still is this, what I call podcast Tinder, which is called matchmaker.fm, which is basically, people who have podcasts and people who want to be on podcasts. And it's like a social media sort of thing. And it's like, hey, you contact this person, think you'd be a good fit for the podcast. And that's how I did a lot of them during the pandemic. But it also got kind of like weird of just the strange sorts of people from all over the world. And it's like, this isn't really necessarily even relevant to me. Not that they weren't interesting conversations, because I think you can have an interesting conversation with most anyone if they're willing to go there with you. But it just kind of started getting really far away from me in a way. And so as we started opening up post-pandemic-ish, if we're technically not even post-pandemic, but like I wanted to intentionally have local musicians on my podcast because I myself am a local musician. And so it became a thing to where I started just having a bunch of local musicians and trying to give voice and, you know, have interviews with these local musicians that they wouldn't normally get in a, you know, normal publication, because a normal publication doesn't have to ask about your view on spirituality or religion or your definition of God. But I think it's a way of getting to know a creative person in a cool, interesting way. And so, yeah, my podcast has kind of become a local music interview, deep conversation thing, but it's always just been, I can have anyone on and have a deep conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The way it should be.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point you make about how a lot of publications don't really go there. And part of that's as someone who's worked a little bit in writing and such. I mean, there's always a word count. There's always a limit, you know, however many pages you have, unless you're like doing your own thing, which of course is partly why I do my own thing. But yeah, there's naturally going to be limitations on what you can get to. There's going to be limitations on what your you know, the people who are paying for your advertisement might not want to have those kind of conversations, sharing a page with them. But a podcast is a really nice format to really, you know, explore all that. And I think that's pretty cool. One thing you said earlier there is that when you start out your podcast, you kind of just reach out to your friends, and that's almost always the case with a lot of podcasts, which I think is cool. Naturally, you want to, one of the hallmarks of, you know, a conversational podcast, at least, is, you know, to have an organic conversation, and it's better and easier to do that with people who you are well acquainted with. So I think whenever, and I'm sure you know plenty about this, but a lot of folks will start a podcast and they talk to their friends, and then they run out of people, and then they run out of steam, and they just stop making podcasts. So why do you think that is?
So, yeah, people don't really realize that a podcast is a lot of work. And I actually try and tell people that if you're thinking of starting a podcast, don't. Like, not everyone needs a podcast. Not everyone has to have a podcast. But if you have this idea and you think you're the right person for it, and it just like won't get out of your head, and like, it's like, you have to start a podcast. It's not about you want to start a podcast or you think it would be fun. It's like, this has to come out of you. And so, yeah, it wasn't even, for me, it wasn't even so much of like, oh yeah, I could do a podcast. It was like, how can I turn this deep conversation thing into something? And so it's not even so much about like, oh, I'm interesting enough or whatever, but it's like, yeah, you have to be able to really want to do it. And so people start podcasts because they think it's fun, and then it stops being fun because it starts feeling like work. And so that's one thing. Or they run out of people because they really just like having fun conversations with their friends. And it's like, it's not a bad thing to have a fun conversation with your friend, but like, do other people need to hear it? And so like, and you can have interesting conversations, but I mean, like I was kind of saying earlier, my brother's wedding reception was this week, and bachelor party and everything, you know, people drinking, and there were so many awesome, deep conversations going on, and no one's ever going to hear those. And that's okay. Like, those are great experiences to have with individual people, but like, do a podcast because you absolutely have to. And so that will be part of the drive. And so the rest of it is then, yeah, the work of like audio. You know, so part of the reason why you have me here as a industry person is that I do edit podcasts as well. That's one of the jobs that I do. And so people may not consider the fact that podcasts involve audio.
Right.
I know that this is an audio format, but like when you really sit down and think about it, oh, maybe I don't know anything about audio, or I don't have any audio equipment, or like maybe I have like an iPhone. It's like, why does it sound like garbage? And so
You mean I can't just use my iPhone?
you can, but you have to be prepared for the fact that it's going to sound like garbage. And so
You got to market that.
We sound
Yeah.
like crap.
yeah. I mean, you could
Garbage
work
podcast
with it, but
featuring Death by Knowledge.
yeah, so audio is a thing that people have to consider when they start a podcast. And and so yeah, sometimes people start a podcast and they're like, man, this audio thing is hard. And so you can either spend the time to learn how to do audio stuff. And so sometimes people don't want to spend the time. And it's like, man, it sounds like garbage. And it feels like I have to, spend hours on YouTube learning how to use Audacity or something because it's free. And that's the other part is money. So, I mean, how much money are you willing to throw into this thing? It's a free thing. I don't make any money from my podcast. I'm on episode 302 and I haven't seen like a dime for doing this podcast. I do it because I want to. But like, I've also thrown in a lot of money into this podcast. I have a website. I have, all the audio equipment, and I was going to have that audio equipment anyways, but like, it takes time and money to do this thing. And so if you don't want to take the time to learn how to do audio, then you can pay someone like me who knows the audio side, who has been podcasting for many, many years to do that for you. And I mean, then there's the money side. Do you want to even spend money on a thing that may not make you any money at all? And so time investment, money investment, or kind of connection investment. Maybe you know a guy who knows how to do audio and, you ask them to do a favor for you to do the podcast for you. But like over time, that's going to start to, all right, I'm taking a lot of time on this thing and I know you're my friend, but like, can you like pay me? So like, and so, yeah. And that's the other part too, is once you run out of friends, who else are you going to have on the podcast? Are you extroverted enough to be able to ask other people to be on your podcast? Are you willing to have conversations with people that you don't know really well? Are you willing to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation? And so, yeah, a lot of podcasts don't make it very far because there's all these things that go into it that they may not have considered. But I don't know, for me, I kept it going and I saw those hurdles and I just kept going past them. And it's not even so much that, like, something that I kind of realized even more so after 300 is that as nice as it was to like have people around me and be a part of it, I'm still only doing it for me. And it's like, even if people are asking me to do the podcast, or even if people like no one is asking me to do the podcast, I'm going to do the podcast for me. And that's the other thing that drives me to do it, is that I like doing it regardless of whatever anyone else thinks. So if I have 2 listeners, or if I have 1,000 listeners or 1,000,000 listeners, it doesn't matter, because like I want to do it. And so, yeah, if you want to start a podcast, you have to like be willing to know that no one will listen to it, maybe for a long time. I don't know who listens to this podcast or to my podcast, but like, I'm still doing it. It's great. I love it.
I really want merch, like a mug that says, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, don't. Bit depth on the back.
Has your podcast on the back.
Man, you can really make that for you can
us.
make that just for like being a musician or like a band in general. Like,
How long's one of your episodes normally?
My episodes are usually like an hour long, and depend. So I do 2, and this is another thing about like the format of my podcast is working smarter, not harder, kind of what you said. But like I do an interview for the first episode, and then after that interview, we do a second episode and we just have a free form conversation. So, I mean, sure, each episode is an hour long, but like it's actually 2 hours. And so the next week you come back, this person that you've gotten to know a bit and gotten a deep dive onto what they believe, and then we can have a free form conversation. And then it's not just them talking, it's me talking, or we're going back and forth, and we can talk about deep stuff or maybe something that we covered in the previous podcast. And so for me, it's a accelerated friendship module thing that like I'm making best friends with you.
Yeah, now we're best friends in the next episode. Just like,
I love what you said about you have to love it. You have to love doing it and love making it and stuff, and make that be the reason that you do it, and not because you're trying to like grow a fan base and be, you know, the biggest person on the charts or whatever. Like you have to do it because you love it and because it makes you happy and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have gotten other things out of it though. I mean, the connections that I've made with people have been, you know, infinitely valuable, even if just like getting to know more local musicians, or I mean, even there was one remote interview that I got with a composer in LA, and now I work for him. I edit his podcast, and it's like I wouldn't have been able to have this job of editing podcasts had I not started a podcast. And so, yeah, I've definitely gotten things out of it that like the podcast itself hasn't gotten me money, but like things around the podcast have benefited me greatly in my life. So, and that's, you know, sure, you may not get like immediate money gratification. I mean, I think he was episode 250. So, I mean, like, it's not like I was desperate for more money or whatever. Like I was still going to do it regardless, but like, hey, cool, I got a client out of it, you know.
You got a job offer.
Yeah.
What an alpha move to be on the podcast and then to offer you a job and be like, you work for me now.
Because I have money.
Yeah. Give me your money. I'll edit your podcast.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm curious to know what podcasts you like to listen to.
Yeah, so it's a variety of things. I think my favorite podcast is Radiolab. And it's, you know, kind of journalistic, sciencey, nerdy stuff, but really deep dives on like interesting concepts. But another of my favorites is Making Sense. Sam Harris. Sam Harris can be known for being some shades of problematic, I guess, but like I think that maybe people just don't have enough time to like listen to all the nuance that's there. But like the kinds of conversations that Sam Harris is having is like top notch for me all the time. And then I listen to a bunch of video game podcasts. So like IGN's like Podcast Unlocked, Game Scoop, and Beyond, and then No Clip has a podcast. So like No Clip makes video game documentaries, but they also have a podcast. And then some like music industry podcasts, Broken Record, Malcolm Gladwell and Rick Rubin and Bruce Headlam have
Those are dope.
Yeah. Those are really good. And it's music interview podcast. What is it? Bobby Owsinski. There it is. Bobby Owsinski has a podcast called Inner Circle, and Bobby Owsinski wrote like the book on like music production that like we used in like music production classes. So like, yeah. So, I mean, a lot of industry stuff, but yeah, there's also just like random stuff. Like The Comedy Button is a podcast that is like really, it's been going since I think like 2009, and they're still going. And it's just like a bunch of dudes being nostalgic and funny. And I love that stuff too. But yeah, let me see. Like, I'm probably like leaving something out, but like, yeah, Radiolab. Song Exploder is another music podcast. And I think that any producer or songwriter should be listening to Song Exploder. Yeah, and then Braving the Elements is another good one. It's a Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast. I'm a giant nerd.
Get the niche ones. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And another favorite is Good Job Brain, which is a trivia podcast. Great. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
I just gave you like
tons of recommendations.
thousands of hours of audio content to listen to. Don't watch any of the shows you're trying to watch. Just listen to all of these podcasts.
Yeah, listen to people talk about them. Yeah.
Like when I used to live with Brandon was always going down like YouTube holes of stuff like.
Oh yeah, I'm like, man, I've been on YouTube since it started. I love YouTube.
YouTube's another one that's just like deep rabbit holes. Yeah.
I like podcasts that no one listens to, like where like
Listen to my podcast.
like I'll find podcasts that I like, but they've been dead for like 6 years, and it's like they did like 200 episodes, and there haven't been any new ones and stuff. But
I've caught up with ones like that before, where you're too late to the party, kind of.
exactly, yeah, video game podcasts, and there's usually a lot of those. So.
One thing I just want to ask on behalf of potential listeners who might be interested in the kind of stuff you're doing. So say they don't have that audio know-how, they don't have the equipment, and you can edit them. What's kind of your baseline for that? Like, is there, if somebody records something in just the worst quality, how much of that can you save in editing?
Yeah, so I mean, I've thrown a lot of money into plugins. So like Isotope RX is just pure witchcraft, honestly. The way that it removes noise is amazing. But like, yeah, I've been able to rescue some like, over Zoom with like a laptop mic in a like completely concrete room, it seemed like, and there's a lot of noise reduction and compression, and like, I don't know, I do like 1, 2, 3, technically 4 layers of compression to just like get it up to audio standards. There's audio standards that like the industry says a podcast should be allowed as -16 LUFS. I'm getting like real into the weeds here. But like I go up to -14 LUFS because that's actually what most podcasts are at. And you're going to have to like turn it up a little bit more if it's at -16. So, I mean, there's just like all this sort of nonsense that you like have to consider. But I mean, I can denoise a pretty crappy recording and at least get it loud enough to where you can understand what is being said. But if you do that every time, your listeners are going to start feeling.
Yeah, your podcast better be really good.
Yeah.
So I got a
fix
scenario.
my podcast if I'm bad at talking to people.
I got a
and
scenario
editing.
for you. Have you ever gotten someone who's just like, I actually used to edit audio back in the day, so I understand how people can come, like just don't understand anything about it sometimes. Like, but has anyone ever like just come to you and been like, hey, can you fix this? And it's just completely like just a flat line or like just completely like just unfixable, like just completely just.
I haven't gotten any of that quite yet. I have gotten some just strange audio errors that I've been able to just like cut out. But yeah, I mean, in that instance, I would be like, sorry, try again. Like, you have to do the entire thing again.
Because
sorry.
like, yeah, I just wanted to point that out because it's like there is some audio that is just not fixable because there isn't anything there anymore. It's like, it's just, sometimes people will just turn things up too much, and it's easier to like pull something up that's already been turned down a little bit than it is to fix something that's just been, the gain's all the way up, and it's like you're just clipping the entire time.
Yeah, no, I mean, try again. Sorry. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes that happens. I've lost several podcasts over the years, and just hit up that guest again and be like, hey, sorry, something happened. Can we do this again?
The lost tapes.
Yeah. And I mourn the loss of some of those really good podcasts. Like, well, they're gone. All right, well, let's do it again. And that's the other kind of interesting part about this thing is that we can just have conversations anyways. And so it's like, yeah, again, so many of the conversations that you have are really interesting and they're never recorded. And sometimes you attempt to record it and it doesn't sound great. Good or great. That was the word that came out. And so, yeah, just try again. It's fine.
That's such a great way to approach that, because it's just, I used to get those before, and it would come from people you wouldn't expect it to come from. It's like from people who should know what they're doing at this point, and you're just like, "Can you fix this?" Like, no. It's literally nothing no one can do.
I also do like several types of editing, like so I can just take the recording and then make it sound good, and then I also for a couple of my clients I do a complete type edit, and I'll remove every single like, awkward pause if they stop to
I like all that
cough
stuff.
if they so
Those words they can't be saying on a podcast.
You just make a
Instead of extending
podcast.
I see where people
Of those
upload where
words.
they've cut all that out and that's all that plays.
Yeah.
It's like here's everything that we cut out. Yeah.
You cut out their bad opinions and then they get it back and
Yeah,
sounds
that's it,
great.
yeah.
So there is a degree of that to where and there are communities of podcast editors as well. And for me as a podcast editor, like I cannot work for someone who I just don't agree with, or because I will
cut it all
sabotage
out.
their podcast
Yeah.
subconsciously. So you
can't
have
put
to
that
know
in.
yourself well enough to be able to say like, I don't think I can work for you anymore because I'm subconsciously sabotaging your podcast. So yeah,
That's very fair.
you can
especially-
say no.
Yeah, especially like if you're probably having to listen to a bunch of it and then just like constantly like hoping for the downfall of this like podcast that you're
Exactly.
now contributing and editing and helping and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I want that whenever I work with a client, I want them to succeed. That's what you get differently with me rather than like some rando that you get on Fiverr or something. Like I want you to succeed. I want your podcast to sound good. I want you to make the thing that you want to make. And I'm just a tool to help you in making that. But like,
Yeah, if you don't
if I
agree,
don't like
yeah.
you, I can't make it good. Yeah.
Cool. Santiago Ramones is a tool, everyone.
Tool's one of my favorite bands.
So I think on that note, yeah, if people want to reach out to you about your services, how would they do that?
SantiagoRamones.com. That is where all of my everything is. And I believe my services are at like the top of that. So, I mean, as soon as you go there, it's like, hey, look, I compose music. Hey, look, I edit podcasts. This is how much this would cost. So yeah, like you can very directly, there's a contact form on my website, or you can just email me, SantiagoRamonesmusic@gmail.com. But yeah, website, SantiagoRamones.com. Super easy for you.
Yeah, super easy. I've been there. I can attest to that.
Unless they can't spell very well.
SantiagoRamones.
There you
Nice.
go.
Played at half speed. If you
Slow that one down.
You want to plug anything else? We're going to wrap things up here.
Yeah, I make music, which is you will also find on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be doing the Mental Mondays again. I don't know when this thing is out, but that is another thing that is. Yeah, I do gigs occasionally. I'm not actively trying to book. My album isn't out yet. I'm working on an album, but you can hear the stuff that is out already. And yeah, I'm in like all of the music streaming places as Santiago Ramones. Everything I do is me. Yeah.
Cool. All right. And let's take it over to Death by Knowledge. Plug your stuff.
Every Day is a Blessing is out on all streaming platforms. We also have our live performance recorded by the wonderful Circle Lotus Media on YouTube, as well as a live recording of the entire concert that is only available on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
So,
So the live album, the recordings from that live album are all available on Bandcamp to purchase as an exclusive. A lot of those songs we don't have recorded anywhere else. The live version is a fully available version of these songs right now. And the live recording of the whole show, the whole set is available right now on YouTube. But then there's also snippets of smaller songs and stuff. And one of which is our Welcome to Planet Earth performance, which was our before closer, or our closer before the encore, I should say. And that is available on Circle Lotus Media's YouTube page as an exclusive on there. We owe them a debt of gratitude for that, because that it took our release of this EP to the next level. So everywhere that you can think that you could find music, it's on there. We got exclusive stuff that's on exclusive places. It's all because we want to give you as much content as possible.
Yeah, and then there's a All Sinks In single that's on there. The Cursor to the Meek. And then the music video we did for Mid Japan's on YouTube. That's on there too.
So that one's actually a different story, because that was before Griff and Jake joined the band, and Eduardo and Andy were in the band at the time. And if you guys don't know who Eduardo was, he was the bass player for All for More too, and he currently runs
Rest in peace, All for More.
Yeah, rest in peace, All for More. And he currently runs, I believe, the ACM, the new ACM Performance Lab that's in the campus. Cool so he's a hardworking dude.
But yeah, check it all out on the streaming platform. So.
Yeah. Can we do personal plugs, just like quick little ones? Jakey?
Twitch.
I don't really have much. I just do Twitch, man. Like I do a lot of. I just started, man. But Sideshow J4X3. It's Leet Speak for Jake.
You can go check him out. He's doing free giveaways.
Yeah, I'm also my other bands. Sign Lives. We've got a lot of stuff on our YouTube page and Facebook page and stuff. We're on everything, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So we're kind of taking a break right now, but please go check us out and pick up some merch and stuff. I'm also in another group called Dom McClenny. It's just self-titled guy, Red Dirt, Southern Outfit. It's a lot of fun just to be as versatile as possible. So if y'all have any gigs or anything, hit me up.
There we go.
The drummers, man.
Yeah.
It's a very valuable member.
Yeah. I have a YouTube channel that I just started called Opal Daisy's Video Art, and it is where I've cataloged a lot of the VHS content that I've been making and some of the video art stuff that I've been just recording around town. And like sometimes it'll be a band performance, and sometimes it'll be this weird little short video that I made, and sometimes I just marry a VHS clip of the sun going down over Lake Hefner with music that I like. And that's all it really is. And I, go subscribe to it, make it all nice and pretty. I appreciate it.
It gives me almost an American Beauty vibe. The guy is just like
plastic bag.
It's very honestly. Whenever I saw those things, those are like.
I was driving the other day almost and saw a Walmart sack or something just fly. I'm like, man, I almost want to stop and just.
Yeah.
I saw your video and I was like, man, it made me think of my dad's Nazi memorabilia.
Well, that's not my intention of the video. I assure you, but
well, because it's American Beauty.
Let the record show.
Yeah.
I have like a bunch of old recordings I did back in the day under Hayden Bedwell on Bandcamp that you guys can listen to if you just want to know my history and stuff like that. I am actually working on a new release. I'll probably end up recording with Griff at some point. But yeah, I got that stuff going on, and then I think I'm going to try to release a 3-track instrumental electronic EP this year too under the name Nandela Effect. So I got about 15 minutes on that so far. So
right on.
Yeah.
I really don't have a plug. I do have some electronic music that I've been recording over the past few years, and so maybe at some point I'll put that out and get back to you on that.
Yeah, well, great. Brand Value Flakes
what's your YouTube
has your number on that one.
Oh, my YouTube is Death Snake 420.
Okay.
If you want to come, I've had that channel for a long time.
No XX or 69 or
anything? No. I ended up losing that one.
Okay.
But yeah, right now I've just been speedrunning Perfect Dark. I've got a few third place times right now, and so
that's world times.
World
right?
on Xbox.
Xbox world time.
Ranked.
I'm not on N64. I'm not elite yet.
So if y'all think you're faster than this guy,
yeah, so
pull up.
We'll all play Perfect Dark together. So
Yeah, to bookend it, please go stream Every Day is a Blessing and go watch the Death by Knowledge full set on YouTube and everything. And
T-shirts.
We got T-shirts.
Where can we get our T-shirts
Feel free
at?
to DM us. We've got tons of T-shirts.
From the back of a van.
Yeah, just message us
We'll
and we'll
just
figure
pull
out how to
up.
get you T-shirts. So.
If you message us, we will send a bird that is carrying the load, and it will drop it off to you wherever you are.
As long as you're in a reasonable, multiple pigeon.
Yeah, you got to be in a pigeon-centric area, kind of.
They're not cheap.
Yeah, it's like we go to
Don't steal our
great
pigeons.
lengths to make sure our pigeons are treated properly.
Yeah, we got to charge them on USB-C ports.
Yeah,
like every night.
Birds
because
drones.
birds aren't real.
Everyone
right?
just thinks to themselves, you got to plug your birds into the USB-C every now and then, but it's an every night type thing that you got to.
Yeah, technology just really hasn't caught up to where we need to be.
Why do you think they can't flatulate? Because that's their charging port.
It's the charging port. You're right.
Right.
Yeah, that's science right there. You can't argue with science.
Not at all.
On that note, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, Santiago and Death by Knowledge. Thank you to Circle Lotus Media for letting us record here. And Elecktra, take it away.
Coming up next, Fear from Death by Knowledge. And that was Fear by Death by Knowledge. Thank you, Circle Lotus Media. Circle Lotus Media, the super awesome, great dudes. They do YouTube. I'd like to give a shout out to Caleb Earl Gray for letting us use some of his equipment for recording. I'd like to give a personal shout out to David Joachim for letting us